Welcome to Hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel. I'm Andy Saunders. On this episode, I break down the All-Star Games with Colby Burnett. Hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel starts now. Good evening, Jeopardy fans, and we are live here on Hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel, presented by thejeopardyfan.com. Once again, and as always, I am Andy Saunders, and I will be moderating this discussion. The All-Star Games ended last week, and with me on Hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel this evening, welcome to Colby Burnett. Thanks for joining me, Colby. Well, first up, congratulations on your team's third place finish in the tournament. I'll get to I'm sure it was a surprise for you at the time considering how it all went down, but we'll get to that in a little bit. My first question, actually, how did Team Colby kind of prepare for the tournament?
So a lot of it was searching through the archive, so thank you for that. It was mostly determining the other team's strategy. We looked at the sort of how these teams were composed, and we figured, well, they're probably going to put their strongest person on the buzzer for the most amount of time. So you expect Brad and Ken and Alex, Jacob to be playing, single Jeopardy one round and double Jeopardy the next. You expect their weakest player, so to speak, to play one of the single Jeopardy rounds and probably the final Jeopardy that was immediately before that. And so we organized our team based on those principles, and we were in a weird spot because we didn't really have a sort of killer person on final Jeopardy. So we mostly just determined, well, who doesn't want to do this? And after we'd gone over it with the team, it's just like, well, I think I'm the fastest on the buzzer, so I should not be playing Final Jeopardy. And then my teammates are like, yeah, about that. Yeah, since there was a bit of a gap in terms of our Final Jeopardy prowess, so I had to play because I was the better person among us, or the best person among us. And then we sort of worked our way backwards from that. So it was a lot of practice on those kind of questions, a lot of practice on final. We basically, as a group, had proctored something like 150 to 200 Final Jeopardy questions just to see how good we were at that. And individually, a lot of archive searching to see, well, what's come up in tournaments of this magnitude. So we looked at the Battle of the Decades and the $1 Million Masters, etc. And we figured that this would be a difficulty plus tournament. And, we thought our team composition would be very good for that. That was most of our preparation.
Now, how much did it... it seemed like your team was spooked a little bit by the first game. You went up against Alex and Brad and struggled a bit. How much did that whole first game, how much did that affect things going forward?
I mean, we were the only team to make any sort of switch, and pretty much the only switch was having Pam on the buzzer for both rounds and to have me play double Jeopardy rather than single Jeopardy. Because we figured out sort of that third player among each other. Well, that's going to be a pretty even matchup among any of the teams that were remaining, and that double Jeopardy would be more of a value. So single Jeopardy, I mean, yes, I got outplayed by Alex and by Brad. But had I landed that double Jeopardy, had I landed that daily double rather than Brad, well, I would have been right there with Alex. Alex sort of killed both of us. And that's what he does. So I wasn't necessarily spooked, but I knew that Alex would be the difference maker in any game that I would play against him. So, it didn't really alter our strategy too much.
Okay. Now, how much did it affect... How much did it affect everyone? Because it seemed like taping took a little bit longer.
Oh, I mean, the amount of fluff that went into that production, it was a bit over the top, but we knew the schedule coming in. And we knew that, one of us both teams would be secluded for, several hours waiting for the outcome of the other match and having no idea whatsoever. I don't think it really altered our gameplay. It just sort of dragged. I mean, we played, those first 2 rounds effectively took 2 days, and really that's 4 episodes in 2 days when normally it's 10. So it's a bit difficult to parse through, but I think we did okay.
And I think a lot of people were upset by that online, the fact that it dragged a little bit.
I mean, I knew there was going to be, like I said, that American Ninja Warrior backstory, and the strategy. Well, the strategy is when you know things, you hit the buzzer and, you hope for the best for the most part. It's not like, say, even when we were eviscerated by Brad's team, it's not like they're going to, take their feet off of the pedal. They're going to buzz in every single time that they know something. The strategy was pretty set for every team, and it was pretty much the same, and that was made well in advance. So I can understand the fans not really getting into that because a lot of our choices were fairly obvious, and we couldn't really go into a significant amount of detail about that.
Right. How long did they take to tape?
Let's see. So there was an entire day of promos, flat out. Like, we were in a studio for several hours, and we didn't tape a single question. There was half of a day, sort of, for all the captains make their appearance and they talk about that. There's a bit of banter back and forth, and that took half of the day. The actual matches took the other half of that day, and then once that was settled, I mean, we had one more day to shoot the wild card match and the final. So, it was 3 days. Pretty consistent, so that's how that ended up.
Did you think any team might play any sort of a gambit in terms of their maybe put a weaker lineup to maybe psych the other teams out in an early round, or try to avoid Ken or Brad a little more?
I mean, well, I tried to avoid Ken and Brad, and look how far that got me. It's just like, well, you could avoid Ken and Brad to get Larissa and Matt, and pretty much every team has that sort of death lineup. It's just a matter of degree. So most of your gambits are going to be failures. You're going to hope that your sort of more middling players, like, they're still very good, but they're not Ken and Alex and Brad good. Mm-hmm. And they'll hold their own, and you hope that you are able to make a difference in your particular round with your slightly stronger players. And pretty much every team there's a ranking of players, and sort of that third player who's still very good, they pretty much always played the first Final Jeopardy and the second Single Jeopardy. And their impact on the game is sort of muted, but still important.
Right, because obviously that third player, if you've gone big on Final Jeopardy and then have missed it, as what happened in the wild card game, that certainly had an effect on things.
Oh, it certainly did. And I mean, when I saw that category and I saw that we had Alan up there, and creative writing major, like, this is the wheelhouse, and I know that Alex is going to come out and Hulk smash that round. And so I'm looking at this and I'm seeing the 2 misses. I'm seeing that I did well, like, I'm out in front, and I see those 2 big misses, and I see the blank that's in front of Alan's podium. And I guess the easiest way to say how I feel is how I felt in that moment. It's Richard Sherman at the end of Super Bowl 49, like, watching Russell Wilson, like, drive down the field. Everything is going great, and then the look on my face was very similar to his. So, I mean, every team pretty much did the same thing.
Yeah. How did you find that specific Final Jeopardy on the sidelines? Were you able to get that one, or?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that went through my mind when they said double talk is, like, what poem has a word repeated twice or has a repeated word? And it's like, that is the first. And like Jungle Book, animals, word repeated twice, tiger, tiger, tiger. And it's just like, all right, he's going to nail it. He's going to nail this. He's going to nail this. And I'm just like, oh, no. So watching that a triple stumper I knew that was probably the hardest double Jeopardy, the hardest final in the entire tournament. But given the quality of players, you think that's gettable. And in the back of my mind, I do wish that more finals trended like that than the opposite. Like, I think that the ones that were in Battle of the Decades were too difficult and that these were a bit too easy.
I wonder if they saw what happened at Battle of the Decades and decided to make the finals slightly easier for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible, but there's some middle ground, and I know that they know what that is because these are professionals and they get paid. And the idea is, if with these quality of players, well, the final doesn't matter nearly as much. So if everybody's going to get it, certainly the teams that are assembled near the top, those top teams that have been assembled to handle this, they're all going to get it. Like, that Art of War one in the first game is like, okay, we're all sunk. Like, I was hoping that for us to have any sort of outside shot, Ken and Brad's team would get into a gunfight and miss final. And then it's so transparently Sun Tzu that, well, okay, well, that's the way you want to play it. Fine. And so we're not going to be winning this.
So speaking of Ken or Brad, how difficult, I'm guessing that even most contestants don't really know what it's like to actually have to play someone like Ken or Brad. So what exactly is it like standing up there, trying to get a judge on the buzzer and they're constantly beating you in?
I mean, it's incredibly frustrating, but the thing that, you come down to is when I played before, maybe I could get a category in my wheelhouse, or I know there's a category that I know better than my other two competitors. And with those two, and with a lot of others who played this tournament, like, that doesn't exist. So the buzzer is pretty much everything. And, I would say, look at those clues that were up there, and 80% of them, all three competitors know. So you can't bail. You can't just, hide in your font of knowledge here. So it's incredibly frustrating when you don't get in. I mean, the last game I played, I think I buzzed in twice. There were categories that I was not as well versed in as my competitors. Everybody knows I knew more than two things on that board. So you just have to roll with that.
And I mean, Matt and Larissa are both excellent on the buzzer.
Yeah. Take it from an experienced individual.
So the other big shock of the wild card game was Alex missing that True Daily Double on Pulp Fiction. Now, you had a couple of different ways of experiencing that. The first one, obviously, you were in studio when he missed that. Talk us through what was going through your head and what you were thinking when he missed that Daily Double in studio.
Oh, I mean, it's pretty rough, but I like telling this story. So Alex bet about $20,000 of in-game money on that question. When I saw that question, the first thing that I did was lean over and shake Buzzy Cohen's hand and say, "Go get him, champ." And afterwards, and watching him stall, was like, oh, that's Alex Jacob. He's doing his his stall routine for the crowd to heighten the suspense. And then watching him miss it, and the air is just let out of the studio. The best way that I can explain it is, I were in a position where an individual propositioned me and said, bet $20,000 out of your own pocket that Alex Jacob will answer that question correctly. I would do it in a heartbeat. And then that happened. I don't know how. It just did. I mean, that clue had Tarantino written all over it. It has 1994. And people who are as well-versed in movies, and I'm not particularly well-versed in film myself, but 1994, you think Forrest Gump, you think Shawshank Redemption, you think Pulp Fiction. And he had nailed, I'm pretty sure that people flubbed that $2,000 clue, but that was some other hijinks we can talk about later. Yeah, I thought I was a goner.